Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, we are gonna look at a story just done, kinda sorta, of a honest-to-God killer clown. Remember how, a couple of years back, those videos were all the rage, YouTube was covered in head to toe with them?
Nah.
Bruh! Yeah, that kind of stuff. By the way, actually, let me ask you this, right? When you were a kid, did you have in your town rumors that kids would talk to each other about a killer clown going around? Because I did when I was a kid, and I feel like every person, when they're a kid, has rumors of a killer clown. It's one of those things that's just everywhere. I think a lot of children watched Tim Curry's It and assumed it was a documentary, which is a fair point. Well, this story is all about that sort of thing, right? It involves bitterness, it involves jealousy, it involves all the good ones, all the hits. It also had a couple of decades in it, but it landed right here, right now. And it all began when a clown knocked on a door with 2 balloons and murder in the eyes. Let's give it a go. It is the village of Wellington we go to in this old one, just outside of West Palm Beach, Florida. Oh boy. It's just on the edge of the endless swamps that pretty much make up the entire state. And it's not too far from Lake Okeechobee. Go west, you're in Gator country. Go east, you got Floridian civilization. You'd be just as well off flipping a coin. Wellington, about 65,000 people live there, and it's pretty much, pretty run-of-the-mill suburb. Not much happening, but people like it that way. Life moves slowly in Wellington. Oatmeal for breakfast. In one of the last suburban areas before you're in Gator country, a place named Takeoff Place. Takeoff out of here, more like, lived Marlene Warren. Called Takeoff Place, by the way, because there's a giant runway running through the middle of the neighborhood. What can't you do in Florida? Marlene was born Marlene May McKinnon in Macomb County, Michigan. Where Donna Scrivo lived, by the way, if you remember that old case. When I cover cases and they have links to each other, it's like the Avengers all crossing over. Oh yeah, wait, no, this is real life. This actually happened. She was born in 1950, and she married young and had 2 boys, John and Joseph. However, the marriage wouldn't last too long, I'm afraid, for Marlene. And I suppose for her husband too, I guess. They would divorce when Marlene was only 20 years of age. And she later married Mike Warren, becoming Marlene Warren in 1972. They lived in Florida, Mike and Marlene, and together they ran a car rental business, a Bargain Motors, and things were doing good. The family were happy out for the most part. Sadly, John, her oldest son, would be killed in a tragic car accident in 1988. Something which, well, as you can imagine, or maybe you don't even have to imagine, was, awful for Marlene. After that, Marlene and Mike's relationship would never ever be the same. Now, I don't know exactly what happened. Yeah, he was cold to her after her oldest son died. The other son, Joseph, he would later say that Mike just kind of upped and vanished. After the death, he just wasn't there for her, for either of them after it, but that was the first crack in the slab that would end, or show the signs of the beginning of the end, for both Marlene and Mike. In a strange twist, Marlene loved painting clowns. So, she is talented, but those paintings are... So that takes us to the morning of, and it was a sunny one, of May 26th, 1990. It was a Saturday. In a house on Takeoff Place that morning at around 10:30 a.m. was Marlene Warren. She was 40 years old, 21-year-old Joseph, her son, and a couple of Joseph's friends coming around for a Saturday morning breakfast. Mike, the husband, he was not in the home at the time. He was on his way to the racetrack with his friends, ready to blow some cabbage. So they were all sitting there, munching down their food, sitting all around the table, when, at around 10:45 a.m., they saw a car pull in to the driveway of their house. Now, it was a white Chrysler LeBaron, which was a convertible, nice old car, classic 90s car. And they saw, a couple of minutes after, and knock, knock, knock on their door. Marlene went to go get it, and at the door was a clown. The clown held 2 balloons. One read, "You're the greatest." The other had Snow White and the 7 dwarves on it, and they also had a bundle of flowers. Here you go. Joseph, he was still in the house munching away on his eggs and bacon when he heard a loud crack. Now, initially when Joe heard that, he thought it was one of the balloons popping because he had seen, out the window, the clown walk up to the door carrying the balloons. But then he went over and he saw at the doorway his mother, Marlene, crumpled on the floor, and the clown walking calmly as you like down a driveway back towards the still running door open car. Joe, he went after the clown, but he had a broken leg. He was hobbling at best. But he saw the clown get into the car, turn, look at him, drive away calmly. Now, the clown was pretty much unidentifiable. Full makeup on, wig, red nose. The only thing he could say was that this person, brown eyes. And his friends who were right behind him, they went over to Marlene. They turned her over. She had been shot directly in the face. A neighbor called 911. Marlene was rushed to hospital in extremely critical condition, and she would pass away in hospital 2 days later. And so, the investigation into who this killer clown was began. The clown, now, the witnesses couldn't really give anything identifiable about the person. They couldn't even say if it was a man or a woman. All they really had to go on was the make and model of the car, a white Chrysler LeBaron. Unfortunately, though, Chrysler LeBarons in the 1990s, they were like the top-selling convertible in all of America. So, you're gonna be looking for that car. You'll be going there for a while.
For 1990, we made one of the world's most beautiful cars more luxurious. Chrysler LeBaron. There is no luxury without engineering.
But, get this, right? They had an incredible break in the case literally hours after Marlene was shot. The very same day as the shooting, a call came in. An anonymous caller phoned in. It was a woman. Now, never been identified. It's a female's voice saying, "You should look at Mike." Hanging up. Now, 38-year-old Mike Warren. As I said, the marriage between Mike and Marlene, it wasn't great, and it hadn't been since her son's death 2 years previous. Now, they had been married for about 18-ish years, at this point, and sometimes these things, they just happen. Now, together, they owned Bargain Motors, which was, their car rental business. They actually owned a couple of businesses together, and some of these businesses were in Marlene's name. They had a second-hand auto dealership, they had some rental properties, and so you can probably see where I'm going with this. If there was a divorce, I mean, Marlene's gonna get a lot of that. Would he have reason for her not to be sucking air anymore, lest he lose properties, businesses, homes, a lot of money? Marlene's mother, with whom she was very close with, she would immediately start talking about Mike, because she would remember just a couple of weeks before Marlene's death, they had a conversation. The implication of the conversation was, something happens to Marlene, take a look, got long ass, hard old look at old Mike. Giving Mike's everywhere a bad name, this is bullshit. But Mike was proven to be with his friends on the way to a Miami racetrack that morning. He was alibied up the wazoo. But this anonymous caller, they also mentioned another name. Sheila Keen. And speaking of disguising yourself and hiding your identity so you don't get caught, this whole video is sponsored by Aura, my friends. What's Aura, I hear you ask, big dog? Well, other than the probably strange what I give off. Aura is designed to keep you safe on the internet. Aura protects you from scammers and hackers by scanning the dark web. Scammers and those darn hackers will sell your email addresses, your passwords, your phone number, your social security numbers, if and when they get them. So what Aura specifically does is it scans the entire internet from head to toe, toes down there, to see if your information has been leaked. You ever get random emails, phone calls, people knowing a lot about you. And you're thinking to yourself, how the heck did they get my information? Why am I getting these virus-laced emails? Why am I getting these robot calls that annoy the heck out of you? Well, you'd be surprised how your information leaks and who is selling it. Aura stops them. Aura will automatically request removals of your good old stuff, and you need not worry. It also has a whole other host of features, logging a VPN, real-time alerts of suspicious credit inquiries, malware, virus detection, password managers. It does it all. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online by signing up to Aura today, and you can get a 2-week free trial with my link. That is aura.com/thatchapter. So once again, go to aura.com/thatchapter and be honestly kind of horrified by how much of your own information is out there. But luckily, Aura's got your back, giving you a nice little massage and telling you everything's gonna be okay. Thank you, Aura, for sponsoring that chapter. Now let's get back to it. Sheila also worked for A Bargain Motors as a repossession agent. And as a young 27-year-old woman, she was beautiful and she was fearless. She didn't take no shit and she wasn't scared of anyone. She carried a gun, a .38. Sheila grew up on farms in Central Florida and she had a few minor run-ins with the law. Shoplifting, but nothing too serious. She also had a habit of dressing up like a clown. And there were rumors about Mike and Sheila, about maybe there was something more going on than just an employee-employer relationship. Marlene even suspected it. A Marlene killed with a .38. Now Sheila was married, though she was estranged from her husband. In 1987, Sheila Sheltra married Richard Keane, and together they had a son. They had a son named Charles. But in January of 1990, so about 5 months before, Marlene Warren was shot dead on her own front porch by a killer clown. Sheila left Richard. She got an injunction against him citing domestic violence. She moved into an apartment to her own place with her son Charles. And that's when rumors began about something going on, between Sheila and her employer. People would see them together like a lot. And I mean like a lot. In fact, neighbors of Sheila's apartment would say they saw Mike coming and going so often from her place, they thought Mike was the husband. Now, both Mike and Sheila would repeatedly deny any accusations of something improper, going on here. They said, no, you're fucking taking the piss. Squared.
She went to answer the door. And it was a clown with balloons and a little basket. And we heard this loud boom. Well, the clown didn't say anything, but she said, oh, how nice, when she was reaching out for them. To me, it seemed like a man. What? The big hands and the size of the person.
So, the investigation began, and the police had to look at what evidence they had. The evidence the killer left at the scene. The balloons and the flowers. They canvassed nearby stores, and soon they found out where they had been purchased from. The balloons and flowers, a Publix supermarket. Employees were able to tell the police they were purchased by a white woman, brown hair, who had male mannerisms, interestingly enough. And all had been purchased an hour and a half before the shooting. They also were able to track down where a clown costume had been purchased from. They basically went around to all costume shops. Have you recently sold a clown costume that would look like this, this, and this? And employees at one particular one said that on the 24th of May, 2 days before the shooting, a tall, thin, white woman with brown hair came in, bought this, this, and this, bought white makeup, a clown costume, a red-orange wig, and a red nose. Didn't buy the shoes though, because, maybe it'd be like this. So employees in both the supermarkets and the costume shop gave descriptions that kind of matched up with Sheila Keen. And in fact, when they were shown pictures of Sheila Keen, they were like, yeah, I mean, we weren't able to say, oh, that was exactly her, but they were like, yeah, that looks like her. And where the flowers and balloons had been purchased, less than a mile from Sheila's apartment. So when Sheila was sat down and questioned, where were you? She said she was at work that morning, that Saturday morning when Marlene was shot, but she was very vague about the work. On May 30th, the white Chrysler was found, identified as the one the killer clown was in. It had been reported stolen by another car rental place. In the car were orange fibers, like from a clown wig, and also brown hairs. You have descriptions, you have the motive, you have the same weapon used that Sheila owned, and you have brown hairs, like Sheila's found in the killer's getaway car. But it's still not quite enough to nail her.
It's been a tragic thing, and it's been like living in hell for the last year that it's happened. I feel like I should say something to at least fight back, because I feel like I've been whipped and beat against without any reason or proof of any type.
The clown pulled out a gun.
And then shot her twice in the face.
The clown then made a clean getaway in a white Chrysler LeBaron.
White LeBaron.
Found to have fibers in it consistent with the clown's wig.
Police say it was stolen by Michael Warren. Are you guilty of I know I have to ask this.
Sheila Keen and Mike Warren.
The police would get a warrant to search Sheila's apartment, hoping to put the final nail in the coffin to find either the gun or the costume. But they found neither. And so they kept digging. But the case was gradually getting colder and colder. In the following months, Mike Warren would be convicted of racketeering, odometer tampering with, and grand theft. He was accused, essentially, of repossessing cars he sold at the dealership, reporting them as stolen, and then getting, thanks for the insurance. He was sentenced in 1994, and he was released in 1997. In 1999, Sheila and Richard, they divorced, finally, they divorced. And then in 2002, Sheila Keene married, wow, what a surprise, Mike Warren, becoming Sheila Keen-Warren. 13 years after Marlene Warren was killed, when they were both rumored to be, I mean, they're playing the long game in this one. They moved to Kingsport, Northeast Tennessee, and together they opened a restaurant, the Purple Cow, a burger joint.
For many, the recent clown sightings are dredging up memories from 1990 when a Wellington woman was gunned down by someone dressed up as a clown.
In the early 90s, a clown bearing gifts of flowers and two balloons shot a woman in the head as she accepted the bouquet in front of her home. Authorities say one of the prime suspects at the time was her husband. Detectives tell us there are no new leads, and they cannot rule anyone out as a person of interest.
As long as it has been maintained properly, the DNA will always be available to the investigator.
The case continues to be looked at, and with new technology, DNA evidence may actually be stronger.
Because of the advancement of science, they may be able to recover DNA evidence which could not have been extracted 20 years ago, and that ultimately would be cross-referenced with someone who has already been identified in the CODIS system, and you may be able to solve the crime.
There was a witness during the murder. Warren's son heard the gunshots and ran to the door, finding his mother lying in blood. He watched the clown get into a Chrysler LeBaron. Investigators also determined the flowers and balloons were bought at a Publix on Military Trail in West.
And during all of this, the case of who was that killer clown, remained unsolved. The police were full sure that both Mike and Sheila were involved in this, but they just couldn't get like that little bit to like just push it over the line. They just didn't have enough to take to a jury. They had all the motives you see, affairs, greed. Mike, a shady businessman, and he would have lost more if Marlene divorced him. He also managed to get pretty much all of Marlene's estate when she died, which was worth about $1 million, while her son Joseph got jack shit and was out in his arse, essentially, after his mother died. And then in 2013, the cold case was reopened. Back in the early 90s, remember, DNA testing was pretty shit, but DNA was like, whoa, all the rage, like Jurassic Park, ooh, that kind of stuff. But, in a criminal case, the testing wasn't very, very good. It was able to tell if things were similar, but similar is not the same. Similar is not exact. But you fast forward 2.5 decades, technology had advanced to the point you could say exact. And in 2017, 54-year-old Sheila Keen-Warren was
arrested in her Virginia home.
Arrest of Sheila Keen-Warren.
Arrested Sheila near her home.
You're arresting this suspect.
finally 27 years after the murder of Marlene Warren. The hair found in the killer's car matched Sheila's, and also in Sheila's apartment, back then they found orange fibers. They were now able to be determined as the exact same found in the killer's car. Sheila was very surprised that, almost 30 years later, things had finally caught up with her. Sheila Keen-Warren pleaded not guilty to dressing up as a clown and murdering Marlene Warren, her lover's wife. Mike Warren, he was still a person of interest, but he was not arrested. The lead up to the trial would be very long. It would be a path that would be as twisting and turning as like a worm or a clown doing leave me better analogies, circus analogies in the comments below, but it was all over the place is what I'm trying to say.
Keane Warriors lawyers argued all day that they say the evidence against their client is flimsy and circumstantial, and because of that, they say she does deserve bond.
There would be fights over evidence. COVID, of course, led to delays too. The defense would constantly uncover new evidence pointing away from Sheila. And in jail, Sheila was optimistic that she would be found innocent.
I just don't understand why we can't get this nightmare over with. Sheila Keen-Warren writes her mother from the Palm Beach County Jail. Keen-Warren says innocent people shouldn't be made to sit in jail this long waiting on a trial to prove they are innocent. In a letter to her husband Michael, Keen-Warren writes, "God knows I wouldn't hurt anything or anyone. That's not me." She tells Michael she knows the jail is taking a toll on her, but again expresses hope. "I will be glad to get this over with and all behind us," she writes. "I'm confident that my innocence will be proven."
The trial would be delayed 7-8 times in all. There would be false confessions from other inmates. A guy in Maine said he did it, but it seems all the info he got from the news. However, just a few short weeks before Sheila Keen-Warren was due to go on trial for first-degree murder that could result in life without parole, there was a very sudden, and I mean sudden as all shit, plea deal. Surprise plea deal. I can only imagine the state really was not as confident as it appeared in the DNA. Her deal was rather good. Better than you could possibly imagine if you were Sheila Keen-Warren, if you were in her position. It's incredibly good deal she got, as in like, wow.
Sheila Keen-Warren pleaded guilty to a charge of second-degree murder. Let's listen into the court proceedings right now.
My name is Joseph Aarons.
Okay, and what's your relationship to the victim in this case?
That was my mother. All through this trial, I didn't see any remorse. And that's all I have to say. God be with her.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, Ms. Keene-Warren withdraws her previously entered plea and her plea of guilty as outlined in the plea agreement.
This was in late April 2023. Sheila had been in jail for 6 years by this point, and she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The plea deal would result in a 12-year sentence. And with 6 already served, and she had always been on her best behavior, it's likely she will get out within a year or 2, tops. Her lawyer called this a big win for Sheila. No shit.
Ms. Keene-Warren's innocent. She's not, taking this plea because she committed this crime. She's taking this plea for the same reason that a lot of people do in our criminal justice system.
She finally accepted responsibility and pleaded guilty to murdering Marlene Warren. It was long overdue.
It's kind of unbelievable she got such a good deal, over 30 years after the murder. She got sentenced to 12 years, having already served 6, and she'll probably get out within a year. Goddamn, fair play to you. She is one hell of an attorney. And that is how the entire case of the killer clown played out. It's unbelievable that it just ended like this. I mean, it's kind of hard to call it justice at all, I think, at the end of it.
At no time did I think this case was not going to go to trial. This has been a 5.5-year battle.
Greg Rosenfeld says when almost 6 years after her arrest, State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg offered Keen-Warren a 12-year sentence. That with time served and gain time would set her free in less than 2 years. She had to take it.
He ultimately realized that his case was weak and, he wanted his political conviction.
A surprising ending and somewhat unsatisfying, as it doesn't seem like real justice here played out. Sheila will end up doing very little time, and her lawyer still denies she even pulled the trigger. And whether or not anybody else was involved, we will never know, probably. It seems the entire situation was not one Sheila would have concocted herself. You know, it seems a bit... I mean, when the person she was having an affair with just so happened to be out of the house at that exact moment.
And Warren's son, Joe, like I was saying, talking with me earlier this morning, saying in part that the arrest comes as a big shock. Learning of it yesterday afternoon, he was happier than he's been in many years. He does believe, though, his father will be arrested at some point. He says there's no doubt for him that his father was involved. Meanwhile,
Mike, he would say it likely was a hitman who killed Marlene. You know, it was a hit job, right? For what reason? Because he seems to be the only person who kind of benefited out of it. So, you know, but the hitman definitely was not Sheila, and definitely wasn't organized by Mike. Of course not. No way, Jose.
But Michael Warren denies he ever hired a hitman. Keane-Warren's husband, Michael Warren, tells me from Virginia, she didn't do it.
Yeah, prosecute and convict, and they don't care. They really don't care if you're guilty or innocent. They just want to convict.
And so the story just kind of sort of ends, of a killer clown who murdered a woman on her front door for pretty obvious motives, having pretty obvious links in every regard, but getting off very, very easy. In all fairness, like for cold-bloodedly shooting a woman in the face. And yeah, she gets like 6, maybe 7 years altogether. I mean, goddamn, guys. Maybe if you need to get something done, do it as a clown. You didn't hear that from me? The story isn't quite as demented as Pennywise. It's very much more base in nature. Doesn't make it any less effed than the bee, though. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate being here, listening to the story of Sheila Keen-Warren, which kind of... yeah. Sometimes there just isn't really a good ending for anybody involved in this case. But I guess that's life. And I guess it's a story of a killer clown who done killed and kind of, you know, get off pretty easy. And in all fairness, she did. But, here, listen. I'll see you in the next video, which you know will be in a couple of days, so look forward to that. But until then, as always, please take care of each other and yourselves, because I love you. Mike out.